I still remember the way the lights shimmered that night, warm, golden, like melted honey dripping across the marble floor. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. A birthday dinner for the woman I loved, held at one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. And yet, I wasn't sitting at her table. I was serving it. You'd think that would break me. Seeing Ella, my fiancée, laughing among her friends, surrounded by gifts, dressed in the kind of elegance that made the whole room turn toward her. She looked radiant, like she belonged there, and maybe. I didn't. I stood by the table, tray in hand, wearing a waiter's uniform that smelled faintly of coffee and detergent. My shoes pinched a little, they were half a size too small, but the ache in my chest hurt more than anything my body felt. She didn't notice me. Not really. Not the way she used to. And I can't blame her. A man like me, a nobody, didn't belong in her world of crystal glasses and quiet laughter. What she didn't know was that the hotel she dined in, the place that held her laughter and her pride that night, belonged to my father, a billionaire. A man I had walked away from years ago. And now, somehow, fate had brought me right back into his empire. Not as his son, but as a waiter in one of his hotels. Strange, isn't it? How life circles back? How the same floors you once walked on with power can later echo under your shoes with humility. As I stood there, watching Ella raise her glass, I wondered what she would say or do if she knew the truth. That the poor man she pitied was the heir to everything around her. But that night wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about realization. Because love, real love, doesn't need to be proven with money, but sometimes people need to lose everything before they understand what's truly worth keeping. I wasn't always the man serving tables. There was a time when life looked simple, almost like a quiet song you hum without realizing. I grew up in comfort, not luxury, but something close. My father, Dylan, built his empire from the ground up. Hotels, restaurants, real estate. His name was whispered in business circles like a secret spell. But he wasn't the kind of father who smiled often. He believed life was a competition, and love was a distraction. So, when I told him I wanted to live differently to build something of my own, he called it foolish. "Money protects you, Aiden," he said once, his voice calm but sharp. "Without it, the world eats you alive." But I didn't want protection. I wanted purpose. So, I left home, took a small apartment on the far side of the city, started working odd jobs. Dad didn't stop me. Maybe he wanted to see me fail. And that's where I met Ella. She wasn't born into money either, but she climbed toward it with fierce determination. She worked as an assistant in a luxury design firm, always surrounded by things that sparkled diamonds, silk, champagne-colored dreams. The first time I saw her, she was standing by the window of a cafe, her fingers wrapped around a paper cup, her laughter bright against the dull rain outside. She noticed me staring. Instead of turning away, she smiled. That smile, soft, real, felt like sunlight after years of cold. We started talking. About little things, her favorite books, my love for sketching buildings, our shared dislike for fancy coffee names that didn't make sense. I never told her who my father was. I wanted her to know me, not my last name. And for a while, she did. We fell in love slowly, like the steady rhythm of falling leaves. Our dates weren't grand long walks by the river. Cheap pasta from corner shops, laughter that filled the silence between words. But as her career grew, so did the distance between us. She started dressing differently, sleek, polished, every movement deliberate. The girl who once sat cross-legged on my couch, eating pizza in sweatpants, began talking about social image, potential, and connections. I still remember the first time she looked embarrassed when I picked her up on my old motorcycle. "Could you maybe take a cab next time?" she said softly, her eyes darting toward her colleagues. Her words didn't sting right away. But later, when I was alone, they did. Love can survive distance, but not pride. The cracks were small at first, missed calls, short replies, excuses wrapped in politeness. But they grew into walls neither of us could climb. When she invited me to her birthday party at the Grand Hallow Hotel, one of the city's most elite, I knew I couldn't afford to go, not even as a guest. But life, with all its irony, found a way. A week before the event, I got a call from a hiring agency I'd signed up with months ago. "Aiden, there's a position open part-time waiter at Grand Hallow Hotel," the woman said. I hesitated. Then I accepted. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was punishment. But deep down, I think I wanted to see who Ella had become, and what love looked like from a distance. When I first stepped into the hotel, I felt the air change, the scent of expensive perfume, polished floors, the soft murmur of guests who belonged to another world. It didn't feel like a place I should be cleaning tables in, but it was honest work. What I didn't know then was that Grand Hallow wasn't just any hotel. It was one of my father's. When I saw the familiar crest engraved on the glass doors, my breath caught. It was the same logo that used to hang in my childhood home. The one Father said represented legacy. I almost walked away, but something, maybe pride, maybe curiosity, kept me there. So I stayed. And that's how the night came, Ella's birthday. The glittering event that would silently test everything we once believed about love. As I buttoned my uniform and checked my reflection in the mirror, I told myself it was just another shift. But when I saw her walk in radiant, surrounded by laughter and people who looked like they belonged in magazines, my heart forgot how to pretend. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? To her, I was just another waiter. And maybe, for that night, that's exactly who I needed to be. The night began with the faint hum of a piano, low and graceful, almost too beautiful for a place built on appearances. Guests shimmered in soft light, their laughter blending with the gentle clink of crystal glasses. I stood near the back, holding a tray, trying to steady my hands. The uniform felt heavier that night. Maybe it was the weight of memory. Maybe it was love pretending not to exist. I had been assigned to the main ballroom Elaw's section. When the manager read out the name Miss Ella Vance, birthday party VIP service, my chest tightened. For a second, I almost asked to switch. But something stopped me. A small voice inside whispered, "Face it, Aiden, don't hide." So I did. I walked into that grand hall as the lights dimmed, the candles flickering in soft gold tones. Every table was decorated with white roses and silver ribbons. It was perfect, elegant, cold, distant, just like the version of Ella she had grown into. And then I saw her. She was standing near the center table, dressed in a pale blue gown that shimmered like water. Her hair flowed in gentle curls, and her laughter carried through the air like music I used to know by heart. She didn't notice me. Of course she didn't. To her I was invisible, a part of the background that existed to serve, not to be seen. "Excuse me," one of her friends said sharply, snapping her fingers when I walked past. "Can we get another bottle of champagne? The premium one, not this cheap brand." I nodded quietly, forcing a polite smile, and walked away. The whole evening felt like walking barefoot over glass, every word, every laugh, a reminder of what I'd lost. At one point, Ella's eyes brushed past mine. For the briefest second, I thought she recognized me. But her gaze moved on, distant, distracted, and she turned to speak with a tall man in a suit who seemed far too comfortable at her side. He leaned close, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, that same soft laugh that used to belong to me. I don't think she even realized I was standing just a few feet away, pouring her drink. When I handed her the glass, our fingers almost touched. "Almost, thank you," she said, without looking at me. Her voice polite, practiced the kind of tone people use when they speak to strangers. That single word. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. I wanted to tell her everything, that I wasn't just a waiter, that I'd built my life from nothing, that the man she once loved was still standing right in front of her. But pride kept me silent, because real dignity isn't in shouting the truth. Sometimes it's in watching quietly. Knowing the truth doesn't need witnesses. As the night went on, the celebration grew louder. Ella's friends toasted to her success, her promotion, her bright future, her new social circle. Every cheer felt like another nail in the coffin of who we used to be. Then came the moment that stung the deepest. The tall man, Daniel I later learned his name, raised his glass and said to Ella, "The woman who deserves the world." I'm lucky to know someone so rare, so ambitious. The room filled with applause. And then someone asked, "So, Ella, what happened to that guy you used to date? The one from your early days?" She smiled, small, almost nostalgic. "Oh, Aiden," she said softly. "He was sweet, kind, but he didn't fit into the life I'm building. Sometimes love just isn't enough. You know?" The words sliced through me like glass. I stood a few feet away, still holding a tray, pretending not to hear. But I did. Every word, every pause. Love wasn't enough. That was her truth now. I turned slightly, pretending to check the table behind me, just to hide the tremor in my hands. Later in the evening, she stepped away from her group to take a phone call. I followed quietly, not out of curiosity, but because it was my job to refill drinks on that side of the hall. Her voice softened as she spoke, but there was tension in it. Yes, I know, but I can't let him find out. He'd think I'm after his money. My heart skipped. Was she talking about me? Before I could think, her friend approached her, whispering, "Ella, your boyfriend's looking for you." She turned, smiled, and walked back toward Daniel, toward a life that looked perfect, but hollow. I stood there, still holding the empty bottle, watching her disappear into the crowd. And that's when I saw him, my father. He was standing at the far end of the room, in his usual dark suit, his silver hair brushed neatly back. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 years. His eyes found me immediately. He didn't look surprised. He never did. When our eyes met, there was no anger, no judgment, just quiet understanding. He lifted his glass slightly, as if to say, "Now do you see, son?" And I did. All the lessons he tried to teach me, all the warnings I ignored, they were standing right there in front of me, wearing a silk gown and a practiced smile. But here's the strange thing. I didn't feel anger, just peace. Because sometimes the most painful truth isn't that someone stops loving you. It's realizing they love something else more, and it's not you. As the night came to a close, the guests began to leave. Laughter turned into yawns, and music faded into silence. I was clearing the last of the glasses when Ella walked by, her perfume trailing like a memory. She stopped for a second, her brow furrowing slightly. "Have we met before?" she asked, tilting her head. For a moment, I thought of telling her everything. About the boy she once loved, about the father she didn't know I had, about the empire she was standing in. But instead, I smiled softly. "No, ma'am," I said quietly, "just part of the staff." She smiled back, nodded, and walked away. That was it. No dramatic ending, no confrontation. Just silence, the kind that closes a chapter without a sound. When I turned around, my father was gone. But I knew he'd seen everything. And for the first time, I understood his words. Money protects you, but love reveals who you are without it. That night, I realized I wasn't the one who'd lost. I was the one who'd learned. The night after Ella's birthday, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my small apartment bed, staring at the city lights through the window. They flickered like tiny lies, beautiful from afar, hollow up close. I replayed every moment from the party, her laughter, her words, the way she looked through me like I was air. But most of all, I kept seeing my father's eyes across the ballroom, calm, knowing he didn't approach me. He didn't need to. Dylan Donovan never chased anyone, not even his son. But the next morning, when I arrived at the hotel for my shift, the manager stopped me at the lobby. "Mr. Donovan wants to see you," he said, voice tight with respect. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My father hadn't spoken to me in years. What could he possibly want now? I followed the manager into the executive suite on the top floor. The carpet felt like walking on clouds. The air smelled faintly of cedar and money. When the door opened, I saw him sitting by the window, coffee in hand, looking out at the skyline. He didn't turn immediately. "Still prefer early mornings," he said softly. I swallowed. Some habits don't fade. He looked over his shoulder, eyes sharp but not unkind. And some mistakes don't either. I didn't answer. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Sit, Aiden." It wasn't a request. It never was. I sat. The silence between us felt like a test, the same kind he used to give me as a kid when I'd broken something valuable. Wait him out. Let him speak first. Finally, he did. "I saw you last night," he said simply, "serving drinks at a party for a woman named Ella." My throat tightened. "Yeah, it was just work." He raised a brow. "Just work." There was no judgment in his tone, just curiosity, the kind that stripped you bare. "She didn't know who I was," I said quietly. "Didn't need to. I wasn't there for her. I was there too. Understand something?" He nodded slowly, almost as if he'd expected that answer. "You always needed to learn things the hard way." That one line carried no anger, only weary affection. I looked down. "You could have told me it was one of your hotels." He smiled faintly. "Would it have changed anything?" I didn't respond. Maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe it would have made me leave before the truth could sting. Dylan leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. You remind me of your mother when you're silent. She had that same way of thinking too much before speaking. I hadn't heard him mention her in years. It made my chest ache in a familiar way. He continued softly. You left because you wanted to prove something. That love, hard work, and sincerity could build a life stronger than wealth. I respected that, even if I disagreed. I didn't want your money, I murmured. I know, he said. You wanted your worth. But tell me, son, did she see it? The question cut deeper than I expected. I looked away, out the window, where the city stretched like an endless promise. No, I said quietly. She saw what I didn't have. For a long time, Dylan said nothing. Then he stood, walked to his desk, and picked up a file. He placed it in front of me. Inside was a letter Ella's name on the envelope. She called the hotel this morning, he said. Asked to speak with the manager. She said she wanted to thank the staff personally for last night. And she asked about you. My heart skipped. She remembered. He nodded. Not who you are. Just that she thought she recognized you. I told the manager not to say anything. I wanted to hear your side first. I stared at the letter. My hands felt cold. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to decide what kind of man you want to be next, he said. The one who hides from the world to protect his pride. Or the one who faces it with quiet strength. He paused, then added, You don't need to prove your worth to her. But maybe she needs to see what real worth looks like. His words lingered. That evening, I returned to the hotel, not as a waiter, but as myself. Dylan had arranged a small dinner in one of the private lounges. The staff nodded politely, unsure what to call me now. When I entered, Ella was already there. She looked nervous, turning her glass between her fingers. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Aiden. Her voice trembled slightly surprise, mixed with something like guilt. Hi, Ella, I said softly. She stood up, unsure whether to smile or apologize. I thought you were just a waiter. What are you doing here? I took a deep breath. I was a waiter. Last night, that was true. But there's more you didn't know. Her eyes searched mine. You mean? This place, it's my father's, I said quietly. I used to live in this world. Then I left it. Because I didn't want to become what I saw around me. People who measure love with money. She looked down, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't mean to, I know, I interrupted gently. You didn't have to. There was a long silence between us. Only the soft hum of city traffic filled the space. Finally, she whispered, Why didn't you tell me, Aiden? About your family? Because I wanted you to choose me, I said, not the life attached to my name. Her eyes glistened. I did choose you. At first, I know, I said softly. And I don't blame you for changing. People do. We all want comfort, stability. But last night, when I watched you, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was just sad. Sad that love had to compete with pride. She covered her face with her hands, her voice breaking. I didn't know how much I lost until I saw you again. For a moment, the air between us softened, fragile, honest. I'm not here to make you feel bad, I said gently. I just wanted you to know the truth. You were right. Sometimes love isn't enough. But sometimes love isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to reveal who we are when everything else is gone. She looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. Do you still love me? The question hung in the air like a ghost. I thought of all the nights I'd missed her, all the moments I'd wished she'd looked at me the way she once did. But those wishes belonged to a man I wasn't anymore. I'll always care for you, I said finally. But love? That needs to live where trust does. And ours got lost somewhere between what we wanted and what we became. She nodded slowly, understanding dawning like light after a long night. Then she smiled sadly. You sound just like your father. I chuckled softly. That's a first. We both laughed. Though it wasn't joyful, it was the kind of laugh that ends things gently. When I left that night, Dylan was waiting in the corridor. How did it go? He asked. Peaceful, I said. She knows now? He nodded, his expression unreadable. And you? I think I finally understand what you meant, I said quietly. About money protecting you, but I also learned something else. He raised an eyebrow. Protection isn't peace. And peace doesn't come from wealth. It comes from knowing who you are when love fails. For the first time in years, I saw a faint smile tug at the corner of his lips. "You sound wiser than I expected." "Maybe I just had the right teacher," I said. He chuckled softly, patting my shoulder. "Welcome home, son." And for the first time in a long while, those words didn't feel like a cage. They felt like warmth. That night, as I stepped outside, the city lights didn't look hollow anymore. They looked human, imperfect, real. I walked past the hotel, the same one where I'd once carried trays, pretending not to exist, and I smiled. Because sometimes you have to lose everything: love, pride, certainty, to find what truly matters. The days after that dinner felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, there was no noise in my head, no guilt, no bitterness, no constant replay of what could have been, just silence and peace. I'd been carrying the idea of love like a weight, thinking it was something to win or lose, but now I saw it differently. Love isn't a prize, it's a reflection, showing you who you are through someone else's eyes. And sometimes, when the mirror cracks, you still thank it for what it taught you. Dylan offered me a position at the Donovan Group. Of course, he said it like a businessman making an offer, not a father extending a hand. Vice Director of Operations. You'll start at the bottom, but it's your chance to see how things run. I thought about it for a long time. Accepting meant stepping into the very world I'd once walked away from, a world of deals, dinners, and delicate masks. But maybe that's what growing up is, learning to walk back into old rooms with a new heart. So I said yes. Working with my father wasn't easy. He was still meticulous, still demanding. But something between us had changed. The distance that used to sit heavy between us now felt filled with quiet respect. We didn't say much about the past. We didn't need to. The silence carried its own kind of forgiveness. One afternoon, I found him sitting in his office, staring at an old photograph on his desk. It was of my mother, her soft smile, still untouched by time. "You ever regret anything, Dad?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up. "Regret isn't useful," he said. Then, after a pause, "But I do think about the things I didn't say soon enough." I nodded, like what? He looked at me, eyes tired but kind. Like telling my son that I wasn't angry when he left. I was just scared he'd forget where he came from. I smiled faintly. I didn't forget. I just needed to see the world without your shadow. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. That was Dylan's way of saying he was proud. No grand speeches, no dramatic moments, just a small human honesty tucked inside quiet words. As for Ela, she didn't disappear. A few weeks later, she reached out, not with a long apology, but a simple text. "I've been thinking a lot about that night. You were right. Love isn't supposed to be easy. Thank you for not hating me." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I never did. I just learned to stop waiting for what wasn't mine anymore. There was no bitterness in it, just peace. Sometimes, closure isn't a conversation, it's understanding. A month later, I saw her again by chance. I was leaving a meeting when I spotted her sitting outside a cafe, the same one where we first met. She was alone, looking different somehow, simpler, realer. She noticed me, smiled softly, and waved me over. "I ordered your favorite," she said, sliding a cup toward me. "Still take it black?" I nodded, sitting across from her. "Still hate the fancy names?" She laughed. "Always." For a few minutes it was easy, just to people who had shared something beautiful, now speaking from the other side of pain. She told me she'd left her firm. "I realized I was chasing things that didn't fill me," she said. "I thought success would make me feel enough. It didn't." I listened quietly, the way you do when someone is finally telling the truth they've been running from. "I'm happy for you, Aiden," she said finally. "You found your balance. I hope I find mine too." "You will," I said softly. "You already started." We talked a little longer about books, memories, the weather. No promises, no regrets. Just the soft grace of forgiveness. When we said goodbye, I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to anymore. That night, I walked home through the quiet streets. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the city lights blurred like watercolor. I thought about how strange it was, how people can love deeply, lose completely, and still walk away whole. At home, my father was sitting in the living room, reading. He glanced up as I entered. "You look lighter," he said. "I saw Ella today," I replied. He nodded slowly. And she's learning, I said, just like me. He smiled faintly, returning to his book. Good life doesn't give us happy endings. Aiden, it gives us honest ones. The rest is what we make of them. I stood there for a moment, watching him. This man who once seemed made of iron, now softer, more human than I'd ever noticed. Maybe that's what forgiveness does. It doesn't change what happened. It changes how you see it. The months that followed brought quiet success. I started managing smaller branches of the hotel chain, learning from the inside out. I still wore the same watch, still rode my old motorcycle on weekends, still walked to the park where Ela and I used to sit. But now, when I looked back, it wasn't with ache. It was gratitude. Because not every love is meant to last forever. Some are meant to wake you up, and mine did. One evening, after a long day, my father and I stood on the rooftop of one of the hotels, the same skyline glittering below us. You did well, he said softly. Thanks, Dad. He looked at me, the corners of his eyes softening. Do you ever think about what might have been if you hadn't left? Sometimes, I said honestly. But then I think, I wouldn't be the man I am now, he smiled. And who are you now, Aiden? I looked out at the horizon, the city pulsing with life, lights, and stories. Someone who finally understands that wealth isn't measured by what's in your hands, but what's left in your heart when it's empty. He chuckled. You sound like your mother again. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, he said quietly. We stood there for a while, watching the sun fade behind the buildings. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of years, lessons, love unspoken but understood. That night, before heading home, I took one last walk through the hotel ballroom, the same one where everything had fallen apart. The lights were dim, the tables empty. I could still hear the echo of laughter, the faint memory of music. But instead of pain, I felt peace. I placed my hand on one of the chairs where Ella had once sat and whispered quietly, "Thank you," because sometimes you don't need an apology to forgive. You just need time. As I left, I passed a new group of waiters setting up for another event, young, eager, probably carrying their own dreams quietly beneath their uniforms. I smiled at them, remembering the boy I once was. One of them looked up. "Sir, can I help you?" "No," I said softly, "just passing through." And I meant it in every sense. It's been a year since that night, the night everything changed and, somehow, everything began. Life doesn't always give second chances, but it gives you something better. The chance to understand. I still live in the same small apartment, not because I can't afford more now, but because it reminds me of who I was before the noise. The walls may be cracked, the furniture simple, but the peace here, it's worth more than any chandelier ever hung above me. Every morning, I still brew the same black coffee. I still walk to the same park, sit on the same bench beneath the same oak tree. Only now, I don't wait for anyone to join me. I just watch lovers walking hand in hand, old couples laughing, children running freely. There's beauty in watching life continue, in knowing that hearts break, heal, and love again. Sometimes I think about Ela. I wonder if she's happy, if she's found the peace she was looking for. I hope she has. Not every story needs to circle back. Some are complete in their distance. Once, I thought wealth was about comfort, the kind that wrapped you in luxury and kept the world's coldness out. But now I know. Real comfort comes from truth, from knowing who you are when no one's watching. My father and I talk more these days. He doesn't lecture anymore. He listens. Sometimes we sit quietly together, no business, no deals. Just two men bound by the fragile understanding that life is short, and love, in all its forms, is the only thing worth fighting for. Last week, he surprised me with something. A small gift, wrapped simply, left on my desk. Inside, there was a watch, my mother's, the one I'd seen her wear when I was a boy. There was a note with it. Time doesn't heal everything, son, but it teaches, and you've learned well. I smiled as I read it, the words sinking deep. For once, I didn't feel like a boy trying to prove himself. I felt like a man who finally understood what really mattered. I went out that night, stood on the same rooftop where my story began. The city stretched below, full of lights, stories, and unspoken dreams. I whispered to the wind, not to anyone in particular, "Thank you for breaking me just enough to build me better." Because sometimes, losing love doesn't destroy you. It defines you. It shows you that even in the ruins, there's something left to build with your heart, your hope, your faith in goodness. I used to think I wanted a life that looked perfect. Now, I just want one that feels honest. And maybe that's what wealth really is. Not money, not power, but peace. As I turned to leave, I looked at my reflection in the glass doors, the same eyes, but different somehow. Softer, stronger, free. And in that quiet moment, I realized something I'd never said aloud before. Wealth can't measure the worth of love.